we always have room for improvement. And something that maybe once is a failure can be a huge success just in a few months or in a few years' time. And the point is to keep doing it.
Welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson, and I'm the founder of SheClicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk to women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. Our guest today is Marina Spironetti, a travel and food photographer. Marina was the winner of the very first Claire Aho Award for women photographers in the Pink Lady Food Photographer of the Year Awards, and in 2022, she won the Erasmus Wine Photographer of the Year Award in the same awards. She's also had lots of success in the Travel Photographer of the Year Awards, including winning the I Travelled category in 2022. Hi Marina, thanks for joining me on the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Angela. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, thank you. Now let's kick off with how you got started as a professional photographer, because I know you studied languages and literature originally, and then you trained as a journalist before studying photojournalism. So what was it that led you into photojournalism and photography?
It was actually just chance, pure chance, I have to say. A lot of photographers, they would tell you how they received their first camera as kids, and they started to play with photographs at a very young age. That's not my case at all. As you said, I studied languages, and then I started to train as a journalist. And then I moved to London, and I had to quit journalism for a while because I just didn't feel confident about writing in English. And I happened to have a darkroom just downstairs from where I lived. And my, at the time, partner encouraged me to take a course just to make friends, really. It wasn't for any professional reasons, but it was just, to do something and meet new people, which is what I did. And the moment I saw the first image developing, I just felt it was something magic. And I thought, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. And it didn't happen through pictures, but it happened through the darkroom. So it's a bit of an unusual way to, get involved in photography.
Yeah.
And the photojournalism was just the next step, because being a journalist, I thought it made sense to move into photojournalism. And that's how I enrolled in a course at the London College of Communication. And then I got my first job as a UK correspondent for an Italian picture agency. I was super lucky because I had no experience whatsoever. And it was a fabulous experience.
And when you're talking about what you do now, do you describe yourself as a writer first or a photographer, or are you completely one or the other?
That's a good question. I describe myself as a photographer, though. I'm a writer as well, and I like writing, although not as much as I did in the past. It's a little bit more difficult, while photography is easy. So I see myself as a photographer.
Well, they say a picture paints 1,000 words, but in the case of photography, a photograph captures 1,000 words.
Absolutely. It's more immediate, which is what probably is closer to my way of being. So yeah, if I had to choose, I describe myself first as a photographer and then as a writer. Absolutely. No doubt.
Okay. So obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, but with the benefit of that, if you're going back, would you start with photography training from the outset?
I wouldn't change a thing, honestly. It was the right decision. It was the right path. So yeah, I would go back to photography, 100%, no doubt. Yeah.
But do you think your journalism training has helped with your photography?
To an extent, but at the same time, I had trained as a journalist for a couple of years, so it wasn't really such a long time. So I think the real experience as a journalist came with photojournalism and not with what I had done before. It was something quite small, and it was more for local newspapers, so it wasn't such a huge experience at the time. So it was really with photography that everything made sense.
Okay. What was it that made you decide to move away from the picture agency to become a freelance photographer?
Well, I actually was a freelance photographer also when I worked for the picture agency. So I've always been a freelance photographer, in fact. But the thing I didn't like was the speed. The fact that you go to a photo call You take your photos, you barely have the time to go through them. You pick what you think are the best images and you send them straight away. And having said that, at the time, the photo agency I was working for was a very small one. So sometimes people were not even in the office. They were out shooting stories themselves. So I sent pictures and maybe the pictures got online hours later, while all my colleagues from Reuters, Getty, France Press, whatever, I could send them sending the photos straight away. And I thought, oh my God, I'm terribly late compared to them, So yeah, it was that. It was the fact that I felt that I didn't really digest what I was taking photos of. And that's why I moved into reportage photography, travel photography. I like to have the time, and personal projects, of course. I like to have the time to process what I take photos of. I like to have the time to develop a story. So that was really the main thing that made me switch. And also the fact that I moved to Paris. So I couldn't be the London correspondent anymore. So I had to, there was also a practical thing.
Yes, that makes sense. A London correspondent in Paris.
It's very bizarre, isn't it?
Yes, it was a bit, yes. What is it about travel photography that you love?
That I love and I hate at the same time. It's the fact, of course, that I travel. Travel has been a huge passion of mine since I was a teenager. First time I went abroad, I thought, oh my God, there's so much to see outside of my house, outside of my town. And I said to myself, I wanted to travel as much as possible. I wanted to pack in as much as possible in my life. So travel photography is perfect in that respect. But at the same time, so it's something I love, but at the same time, it's something I hate, so to say, as well. Because sometimes with travel photography, you stop at the surface and you don't have time to go below it, really, to investigate a little bit more. Sometimes an assignment is 5 days on the other side of the world, and you don't really have time to connect with that place. So it's something, as I said, that I love and I hate. So I always, the funny thing is that when I have an assignment in a country I end up liking a lot, I travel again to develop more stories, like personal projects, or maybe I pitch it to a magazine, but I make sure that I have more time to work on that. So I go back.
Are your assignments your primary reason for travel?
Yes and no, but let's say these days a good 70% of my travels is on assignment, yeah. And then the remaining 30% is me wanting to go to a country, to a city, and explore a bit more, with or without the camera. It depends.
And is food photography a part of your travel photography and your assignments, perhaps, or is it personal work, or do you see it completely separately?
Oh, no. Food photography these days is a big chunk of my work, and it's part of my travel photography. It's very often I explore a country if I'm on a food assignment through the food and the culture that we can find in food, and how this has an impact on people, on society. It's actually a good way. I think food is a wonderful way to explore a country. It can tell you a lot about that place. It's actually something, for example, when you have a travel assignment, you're always worried about weather. The weather has to be nice. You don't want it to be too cloudy, too grey, or whatever. While with food, it doesn't really matter. You're not worried about the weather because you know it's going to be great anyway. The assignment is going to work because you take photos of people cooking, chefs, dishes, ingredients. So you don't worry about the weather. So it's a great thing, especially when you travel to cold countries.
Yes. And I guess most of us, when we travel, say, on holiday, the food is a big part of that experience. I suppose you're immersing yourself in that by photographing its production.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really sometimes I travel to a place because I just want to investigate something in particular about an ingredient or the harvest season for something. or maybe a small group of people still doing things in the same way they used to do 200-300 years ago. So it's maybe sometimes it's really the reason that makes me travel. It's food. So,
and would you say your food photography is a documentary style predominantly?
I would say so. Yeah. I think my approach to photographs is it's still a documentary one. So yeah, I would say that's the approach.
And how did you find your first clients?
Well, I wanted to work, as I said, the first client was this photo agency, but then when I moved to work as a freelance, I just approached magazines. And this was before the social media madness. So I just used to send them an email or maybe give them a call and say, hello, I'm a photographer. I want to come to show you my portfolio. I would be interested in working for you. And first of all, of course, you do a research. You look at the magazines. You look at their style, you look at what they do and see if they're good for you or not.
Yeah.
And after that, you decide to approach them. And sometimes you send them an email and they don't get back to you because, of course, they receive plenty of them. And you write again, or maybe you give them a call, or maybe you even show up. So you do a bit of stalking in a way, but good stalking. And but I know probably these days it's not a good advice to give to people because things are quite different. Maybe a lot of people will get in touch with them through social media, but I'm old enough to be lucky because I skipped the whole process, the whole social media thing. So it was a bit different. But anyway, the advice is always to keep talking to people, even when they say no at the first time, or even when they don't get back to you, because maybe they simply don't have time. It has nothing to do with your photography, with your work, but just with their time. So
I think that's a very good point, because a lot of people assume it's some sort of rejection of their photography, but it could be that the editor is about to publish a story that's exactly what you've just pitched, or they're thinking about doing something in the future and they may come back to you in a few months.
Yeah, exactly. But, I think photographers, and I speak for myself, but I also speak for photographers in general, because it's something that I see in other people as well. We tend to be very insecure and very fragile when it comes to our work. So if we don't get a reply, we immediately think, oh, it's because there's something wrong with my work. And maybe that's just not the case. Maybe the editor is very busy. Maybe they're not interested in that story in that particular moment. So it's not really about what we do. They might still love it, but maybe it's not the right time or, not the right story for that particular moment.
Yeah, but like you say, it's well worth keeping up to date with what the magazine is publishing, keeping an eye on their Instagram profile so you know what they're posting.
Reading the magazine on a regular basis, because, of course, if I pitch a story about, say, Paris, and maybe they just run Paris 2 issues before, they're not going to do it again before a year or 2 years, So it's also about that. It's also about pitching the right stories at the right time.
Yeah. And you can see development trends as well. You can see what direction they're going in and pitch something that might connect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, you've had quite a bit of success entering photography competitions, but what was it that first drove you to start entering them?
Actually, it was the very, very first time I entered a photography competition was many years ago, because I was still living in London. So it must have been 2006 or 2007. And it was the Travel Photographer of the Year. And that particular year, something happened. I can't remember whether they extended the deadline or whether they were not giving out any prize for a particular category, because they said that the quality wasn't good enough that year, the quality of the entries. And obviously, I felt super depressed about that, because I thought, oh my God, why bothering, So I didn't enter for maybe 3-4 years, and then I started again, and I happened to win a category the next time I entered. So again, whenever something goes wrong, it can always go better.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't really get too depressed about that. We always have room for improvement, and something that maybe once is a failure can be a huge success just in a few months or in a few years' time. And the point is to keep doing it.
Because you learn so much in the process, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You learn so much in the process. You learn so much looking at the work of other people, which I think is something super important. Also, I keep looking whenever I have the opportunity to see the work of another photographer, even if they do something that has nothing to do with what I do. I go to the exhibition, I go to the talk, I read their books, because there's always a lot to learn from other people's work. It's inspiring, and I think you should never miss the chance of learning from others, photographers, visual artists. It doesn't really matter, but really, there's always room for improvement, and other people's work is a great way.
Has winning awards had a significant impact on your career?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially some. I remember, when was that? It was under COVID. It was, I think now about 3 years ago, when I won the first award, the first Clarajo Award for women photographers, with a photo of a woman butcher from Tuscany. All of a sudden, I mean, the photo had a huge impact on media, Italian, international media, and I had photo editors ringing me up saying, "Hey, we have an assignment for you. Would you like to do it?" And I was like, "Wow, this is just completely new. It's usually the other way around. It's usually me pestering people, and all of a sudden they're calling me." It was completely new, and I'm very grateful to that competition. So Pink Lady Food Photographer of the Year, Travel Photographer of the Year. They had a huge impact on my career, absolutely. So I can highly recommend them, and I can recommend competitions in general, although you have to do some research first, depending on the photography you do, obviously, and also what you want to achieve, because it's not particularly useful, say, that I enter an art photography competition, but I'm not that kind of photographer, so it's very important to do your research well, and also to check competitions also, because sometimes there are competitions that are not very serious, and maybe they ask money for the pictures, and maybe then they get the rights to the pictures, so it's not very good for photographers. So I always suggest to do the research, read the small prints, and see what's good and what's not that good.
Yeah. Do you shoot specifically for a competition, or do you select images from your catalogue?
Well, I now know what competitions to enter. And for example, if it's a food photography competition, after an assignment, maybe I have 3-4 really good shots, and I think, oh, this is perfect for that particular category. So I have a little folder, and I put those images there, and then when it's time to enter the competition, I go through them again, and I do another selection, and I choose what I think they are the best for me. And I think having a little folder is a good way, as you go along throughout the year, you put them in the folder, and then in the end you already have a first selection.
I think that's a great idea, because it means, firstly, you're not scrabbling around on the deadline day.
Yeah.
Putting yourself under pressure, try to find your images.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got all your best work together, so you can decide how many you're going to enter and put them together properly.
Yeah, exactly. Having said that, though, 2 years ago, I actually entered the Pink Lady Food Photographer of the Year. I had, made all my selection, and I made all my entries. Then I entered another image on the very last day, because I took it on the very last day of the competition. Mm-hmm. I was in Tuscany, and by chance we just drove by this winery, this very famous winery we meant to go. We have meant to go for a long time. So we went. I only had my mobile phone with me, so I took just a couple of pictures that I thought were nice. And I said, well, why not? Let's enter that in the wine photography section, and happened to win. So it was that was just lucky, very, very lucky. But I thought, okay, this is going to work. And okay, I took it on the very last day of the competition, and I thought, okay, why not? Otherwise, you have to wait another year. And I thought, well, I might as well. And it was a good decision in the end.
Very. It sounds like you would say plan to enter from at least, a few months out, ideally at the beginning, when it first opened for entry, but also don't overthink it. And if something comes along, put that image in.
It's a combination of the two things. So planning ahead and the last minute image that might come through.
And when you win, do you do anything to kind of maximize the impact? Or did you find that actually you're just juggling all the people contacting you and lots of work coming in?
That's a good question. I don't know if I really maximize it. Probably not. I should do a little bit more. I should sell myself a little bit better. And I'm not very good at that, to be honest. But so far, I've been very lucky because I had people getting in touch with me rather than the opposite. But yeah, probably I should do a little bit more to maximize the achievement.
It's always tricky, isn't it, striking that balance between doing the job, which brings the money in, but also spending time marketing that job.
Exactly. That's why a lot of people have an agent at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you don't, I take it?
I don't, probably because I'm a control freak. So I like to be in control of what I do. I like to be in control of my customers. I like to talk to them directly and not through a third person. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I say to myself that, yeah, probably it would be a good idea to have one. Yeah, because it helps you mm-hmm. where you are weak. And I know that I'm not very good at marketing myself. Let's face it. I think a lot of photographers are not. But so far, it's been okay. I could earn a living through photography, so it's been okay, I think, at the end of the day.
Great. Tell me a little bit about your book and the process of getting that published.
It's called Senza Mare, which means sea less, and it's about the traditions of inland Sardinia. There's a reason for that, because my mother is Sardinian, so obviously I've been going to the island since I was a kid, and she's from the coast, though. And I've been fascinated by the inland because it's, to me, it always felt really super authentic. The coast is more touristy, it's a bit different. The inland is absolutely fascinating. So it was actually a work of about 4 years of research on carnival costumes. So carnival traditions and also traditional costumes that used to be worn on a daily basis. It was published in November 2020. So you can understand it wasn't the best time to have a book out. So very good for Christmas presents, but at the same time, it was just terrible for promotion because I actually did only one book presentation and it was an online one, of course.
Yeah.
In a way, I have to say, I have to be completely honest with you, in a way, the little voice inside myself was quite happy about that because not being very good at promoting myself, you can understand I'm not very good at, attending book presentations and talking about me and talking about the book. So in a way, I was quite relieved by the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic and I couldn't do that, But having said that, actually, the first edition sold out. I think there are about, 30, 40 copies around. So it sold about 1,000 copies, which I think was a great result considering that it wasn't promoted at all.
Great.
And the great thing was that I did it through this Italian publisher that is called Crowdbooks. And as the name says, it helps you publishing your book through crowdfunding. So I had to do quite a lot of work for that. So I had to really work on a campaign because you basically pre-sell the book. People can buy it at a discounted rate. So they buy it, say, in August and the book is going to come out in November. And that money gives the publisher the money to work on the book. So it was, I think it was a great way because I had approached other publishers. They loved the idea, they loved the photos, they loved the project, but then I was always asked to put quite a lot of money up front because they said, yeah, we like it, but we cannot take the risk And I couldn't take the risk either because it was a lot of money that maybe I didn't even have at the time, or I didn't want to invest in that. So crowdfunding for a book, I think, is a great way. And I'm working on a second book, which is always about Sardinia. And I'm still in the process to decide whether to go for the same crowdfunding or choose something else. I'll be able to tell you hopefully in a month's time, because I'm about to make a decision.
Okay. Well, best of luck with all that. It sounds great. I think that's a really good time to go to 6 from SheClicks. I've got 10 questions from SheClickers, and I'm going to ask you to answer 6 of them by picking numbers from 1 to 10, please.
All right. I'll start with number 3 because it's my lucky number.
Okay. Lucky number. You've travelled and lived in many countries. Is there another place you'd like to explore, and if so, why? That's from Marianne.
Oh my God, there's many, many places that I'd love to explore. I'm actually right now in the process of deciding where I'd like to move next, because I've been back to Milan, which is my hometown, for 10 years. And when the number 10, the 10th year is always a bit tricky for me. It was the same in London. I lived in London for 10 years and then I thought, what am I going to do now? Am I going to stay here forever or shall I make a move? And then I moved to Paris. And the 10th year has just started here in Milan and I'm exploring possibilities. On one hand, I'm very fascinated by Nordic countries, so Scandinavian countries maybe. Copenhagen, for example, could be a good option. Or at the same time, Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, Portugal is another very good option. So, I have plenty of options at the moment, and I just have to pick up one.
Yeah. Sounds like you need to get a map of the world out and throw a dart and just decide where the next place is.
I have a map of the world where I put my pins, actually.
Okay, so could I have your next number, please?
Let's go for number 7.
Okay, so how much kit do you take with you on a travel assignment? Do you have any favourite lenses or accessories, for example? That's from Rebecca.
Okay, that's a good question. I take 2 camera bodies because especially if I travel in a remote area and maybe there's a problem with one, I always have a backup. And then I like to work with zoom lenses when I travel because they give me more flexibility. I have a wide angle lens. I have a 24-70, which is probably the one I use the most, especially for food pictures.
Yes.
I have a 50mm, not a zoom, but just a 50mm that is my special portrait lens. And then I have a 70-200. These are usually, and then I have a macro for some food photography as well. But this is my kit when I travel. So it's you can imagine it's a heavy kit.
Yeah, you take quite a lot. So I imagine your favourite accessory is a good bag.
Yeah, I know. And my bag is not as good as it used to be like 15 years ago. So I actually have now this little, it's a backpack, but you can also use it as a trolley. So it's helping me a little bit.
Good idea. I know people want to know which camera system do you use?
Nikon. It's all Nikon. And I just stick to it because it's my first film camera was a Nikon. And my lenses were Nikon, of course. And then I just carried on. Sometimes I thought, maybe I should switch to something else. But, I like it. I like my camera. I know it fairly well. So there's no point in changing and having to relearn everything about a new system. So I'll probably stick to Nikon in the future.
And are you still using a DSLR or have you switched to mirrorless?
SLR, and that's a good question because I'm thinking about it. My partner actually says that I'm thinking about it too much. He's telling me off for thinking about it too much because I've been thinking about it probably for the past 3 years or so. But again, mirrorless have many advantages, especially as we were saying, my back would be very happy for me to use a mirrorless. But at the same time, I really like the equipment I have, so probably I'll carry on with that.
Okay, thank you for that. So could we have another number, please?
Let's go for number 1.
Okay, which came first? Had you already taken the photograph of the female butcher, or were you searching for a subject to enter in the Pink Lady Food Photography Awards? That question's from Stephanie.
No, I already took those photos because that was part of a series for an editorial story, in fact. It was a magazine assignment that I did. Actually was an idea of a very good friend of mine. She's a journalist, and she had some contacts with these female butchers, and she said, would you like to work on this story together? And we did. So it wasn't really related to the competition. It wasn't shot for the competition. I just happened to have it. And that was when I saw the competition, when I saw the new category, that was absolutely perfect. So I thought, okay, these photos really fit the bill, and let's enter those. Yeah.
That picture which won the Claire Aho Award, the very first award, is such a powerful portrait.
Thank you. It's still one of my favorite pictures. We took 4 portraits of these female butchers. And the great thing was that we actually, before taking the photographs, we spent a couple of days together, the 6 of us. So me, Fabiana, the journalist, Fabiana Magri, and the butchers, and talking about the photo shoot, of course, talking about the story, but also talking about life in general, they were talking about themselves, their life experience, their work. And by the time we took the photos, it made such a huge difference because we knew each other. I wouldn't say, we haven't known each other for a lifetime, but we knew each other. So everything was much easier. And the most important thing was that we trust each other. And I think trust is so important when you want to tell a story. And I'm not a big fan of shooting straight ahead, of taking the camera out straight ahead when you work for a story. I'd like to spend time talking to people first, and maybe even days. If I have the chance, of course, then I know practically it's not always possible. But if you had the chance, it's really important to get to know these people, and it's important for them to trust you and trust what you do. So the camera is something that comes, the photos come at a later stage. But first, it's really important to get to know each other a bit better. To me, the idea is always to try to go below the surface as much as possible. And probably that's why that project was so successful, because we really had the time before the photo shoot, before the interviews, we had time to get to know each other. And the great thing, if I might add, is that after that photo shoot, Martina and myself became really good friends. And we were really connected through photography, and through that particular photo, it just created a very strong bond between the two of us. So I think, that's
really nice.
Yeah, that's something wonderful that comes out of photography and makes me really happy of my job. I think it's the best job in the world.
One thing I noticed about that picture is that the subject's lipstick and her top are a really good colour match for some of the meat in the scene, and I wondered whether that was deliberate or not.
Wasn't planned by me, but was planned by Martina. She was planning her outfit quite carefully. I mean, she's younger than me, so she belongs to that social media generation. So she's very much aware of things that for me would have been just a chance. But she planned everything. She even planned the color of the lipstick, the color of the jumper she was wearing, and it was great. So it's really a photo that it's my picture, but at the same time, it's our picture. It's something that we created together.
Oh, she did a great job.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so can I have your 4th number, please?
Number 5?
Number 5. When you're working on a commercial project, how much of it is dictated by the client, and how much free rein do you have? That question's from Anne.
It really depends on the client. Sometimes they're quite strict. They have their ideas. And maybe when you hear their ideas, sometimes they're gonna work, but sometimes you know that they need to be changed a little bit. So you try mediate and try to persuade the client that maybe they should also look at things from a different point of view. But it really depends on the client. Like, for example, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was super lucky because I had this assignment with a winery, with a very big winery in Italy. And they were absolutely fantastic because it was a 1-year project. So I had to document their work, the work of the winery, the work in the fields, the harvest, the production of wine, every single aspect throughout a year. And they said to me, you are 100% free to do whatever you want. You have access to all, the factory, to all the premises. So they introduced me to people so that people knew me. And they said, we just want to see your style. We want to see your eye behind the picture. So we want a body of work that makes sense. We want to see that you are the person shooting it, but you are completely free, And that's the ideal customer. That's the ideal client, It's just perfect when it happens. But sometimes, other people are not that flexible, and you have to, at the end of the day, you have to adapt depending on your clients.
Part of the job, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I have your penultimate number, please?
9.
What makes a great travel image rather than a picture just being a holiday snap?
Good question. Well, aside from the technical things, of course, has to be exposed properly, all the technicalities. It has to be perfect from that point of view, and I think we all agree on that. The difference is that the holiday snap is a picture probably you just, by definition, you take it and you don't think much about it. While a good travel picture is something you think about, it's something you plan, it's something you compose, it's something you go back to if maybe the light or the weather is not right. And it's something you put your heart into to an extent.
Yep, that all makes sense to me. Okay, so your final number then, please.
Number 10.
Number 10. You've mentioned that you work on assignments a lot. When you're traveling, just taking travel photos, do you have publications in mind?
If I don't have an assignment?
Yeah.
Sometimes I do. But to be honest, most of the times when I'm on holiday or when I'm on a break, I don't take holidays as such. When I rather take breaks. I rather try to disappear if I have the time for a month or a month and a half. But I don't really plan assignments when I'm on holiday. When I just take photos for myself that they might end up in something. They might rather end up in a personal project. Or to be very honest with you, sometimes I don't even have a camera with me because I also need some time off from pictures. I feel like I have to switch off completely. And sometimes I take photos. I used to say I take photos with my eyes, and they're good enough. Or sometimes, having the advantage to write, I write rather than take pictures of something. Maybe I keep a travel journal, or I use words instead. And it's a good way, to just switch off.
So when you travel for work, it's on assignment, and that's all planned. You don't travel to take photographs that you then pitch to someone?
No, not. Usually I travel on assignment and everything, or 90% of it is planned. As I said, if I travel by myself, it's just for myself most of the time. It's just to have a break from everything. If it turns out to become a magazine feature, it's because maybe it's a personal project that I develop over time, but no, most of the time, as I said, no, it's just my own time, my own pictures. It's just or no pictures at all.
Okay, well, thank you so much for answering all those questions and joining me today on this SheClicks Women in Photography podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll find links to Marina's website and social media channels in the show notes. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find SheClicks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube if you search for SheClicksNet. So until next time, enjoy your photography.